I'm now thrilled to welcome Susan Rieger, who will share her expertise on the evolving roles and identities of care partners. Susan is a social worker who facilitates many groups at Turning Point, the Center for Hope and Healing, which serves people with chronic or severe illness and their care partners. She is also a yoga instructor. Previously, she worked in battered women's shelters with people with persistent mental illness, provided home studies for those adopting internationally, and worked with individuals, couples, and families providing therapy. She also spent 20 years pursuing a professional dance career as a performer, choreographer, and dance teacher. Susan and her husband Joe live and garden in Lawrence, Kansas, with Sammy, their puggle, and Mitzi, their cat. They even have a fall garden with lots of greens still growing. Please join me in welcoming Susan to the stage.
Thank you all for being here today. And in this segment, we're really going to celebrate and look at some of the issues. Am I close enough to the mic? There. Look at some of the issues of being a care partner. And I want to say what a rewarding role. On one hand, we are trying to improve the quality of life and decrease the suffering of our loved one. And at the same time, we are grieving what we thought was going to be our retirement, or maybe retiring early from a job. So very, very hard emotional feelings. So I'm going to be delving into that a little bit today. So supporting the, oops, how come, thank you. So all of these emotions of worry, exhaustion, being overwhelmed kind of are with us as care partners. And it is, my main message today is going to be about the need for self-care. However, I don't want to say, I don't want you to leave here feeling guilty of, oh my gosh, I have to get my self-care in, or I'm going to go out and walk 10,000 steps today, because it's more about this idea of compassion towards yourself, celebrating what you're doing, and looking at what you can do without feeling that guilt or shame. Oh, yes. So I want to talk a little bit about these studies that show how care partners are really at risk for themselves becoming ill or depressed. So very important to be aware of that and to watch yourself. I'm also amazed, you know, I feel like I've learned the most from being a caregiver or care partner of my parents, and from other care partners in the support group that I lead. When people start talking with each other about self-care, it just keeps it in our awareness every day of, what can I find a little bit of time today to do something that brings me joy? Can I do a little relaxation exercise, which I'm glad we're going to be doing that in a moment here today. Are these going the right way? So we've already had a great overview from Dr. Lee today about the stages of Parkinson's. And we also know that people are individuals, that it doesn't always happen in the order that we see on the screen. And I think that's important to know also. I also wanted to say, you know, one of the things that I find really interesting as a social worker, and communication being so important in every part of our lives, but with our loved one, you know, when we see the fate, well, I'm going to just tell you about a man I knew who said to me, with Parkinson's, who said to me, my granddaughter is asking me why I'm not happy anymore. And he said, I told her I am happy. I'm especially happy when I'm with you, but I can't smile as easily as I like to. We base 70 to 90% of our communication on nonverbal behavior. And so when we're not seeing that feedback visually, it's very confusing. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. So we know what's ahead, and we try to be as prepared as we can as these stages happen, whether that's putting grab bars around your house or widening the door of the bathroom so a wheelchair can fit through, whatever those things are. But we are going to be dealing with changes. I want to go to this next slide to say it's not just an uphill climb. Many care partners say care partnering is like being on an emotional roller coaster, that new things happen pretty much weekly that we're looking at, and sometimes it may even be related to an insurance company, or it could be something you're noticing with your loved one, a change that is you need to respond to or talk about or talk to a doctor about. So that emotional roller coaster, we think we're on an even keel, and all of a sudden there's something new that we need to address. These are some things that happen with care partners: sleep deprivation, poor eating, not getting enough exercise, failure to stay in bed when sick. A man I know who's a care partner just said, oh my gosh, I got COVID and I was so sick, I wasn't able to attend to my wife as I normally do. And it really woke him up to say, oh my gosh, I really need to start finding some support, some kind of help here so that I can be sick when I need to. Putting off our own doctor's appointments often happens when we're care partners. So just a little, reminder about being on top of those things for ourselves. Oh, and that last one, isolation from friends or family. Good for you for getting here today, whatever you're not doing, letting that go today. But and why support groups are so important for us as care partners. So I think this serenity prayer is just such a good one for care partners, and maybe for all of us all the time, but of knowing the difference between what we can make a difference in our lives, what we can control and what we can't, and letting go of those things that we just can't change and focusing on the things that we can. Here is an exercise we're not going to have time to do today that's about identity. So we know probably at the top of your list is, I am a care partner. But if you ask yourself this question 10 times and don't stop early, writing down all the roles you play in your life. And what I think is important about this is recalling the things that were important to us before we were a care partner and that are still present. And maybe it's that you are a gardener, or that you love animals, or whatever it is. How do we recognize those identities and not totally have that being a care partner always being number one? This is a turning point where I work. And this is a wheel that's based on the 10 facets of resilience. And we use this with people who have an illness or care partners. And I think I have this up in my office because sometimes it's when I'm feeling kind of low, I'm like, which of these am I kind of not thinking about today? And I'm going to delve into a few of these a little deeper. And these are based on research that resilience, the ability to bounce back from difficult situations, happens when we are aware or doing these things. And you'll have this in your materials you get too. So the first one I want to address that was on the wheel there is support. And why is support so important? As a care partner, people who have not been care partners don't have any idea what you're going through. It's like a mystery. And sometimes it's very hard to explain to family or friends how your life has changed. So support groups are so essential in being able to talk to others. The booklet that you received, the Caring and Coping, is a great resource that you can keep on referring back to after today. And there are so many resources. The Parkinson's Foundation can help you find a support group. And many are on Zoom now, so that means not having to leave your house. So this is a trick I learned from someone about having your list ready, because so many people will say, hey, how can I help? What can I do? It is great to be able to look at that person and know their kind of set of skills and be able to say, hey, could you put this grab bar up? Or, you know, what would be so great is, could you come over for 2 hours on next Wednesday and just give me a little break? You know, having that list ready is wonderful. And people are asking and get a great deal of satisfaction from helping out. So those informal networks we have of friends, families, people we may go to worship with, those are wonderful resources. The hard thing is when it's a chronic illness like Parkinson's, where we're having needs that are ongoing, and sometimes people cannot do things for the long run. So just like Dr. Lee had that great slide about what exercise does for people with Parkinson's, we also know that exercise seems to be the answer to everything. How do you have better brain function? Exercise. How do you have a better mood? Exercise. How do you have better sleep? Exercise. And, you know, our world is not set up for good exercise. We don't live in neighborhoods, most of us, where we can easily walk. We don't have the ability maybe to leave home. So being creative about this is important, or exercising together, if that's possible, is a really great solution too. So exercise was also on that wheel, and self-calming is on that wheel. The ability to realize when we're stressed out and to do something about it. And this can involve so many things, and many of them don't take much time and can be done at home. So the ability to just close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, and I'm glad we're having a mindfulness break in a little while here, just to show how that 10 minutes can make a huge difference. Prayer is another way of accessing that relaxation response. Having a gratitude practice. So this, you know, what a hard deal you're experiencing as a care partner, but also there are so many things to be grateful for in the day, whether it's, seeing beautiful leaves on a tree or the smell of coffee or whatever it is for you, that those little pleasures in life, or they might be more major things. It might be a great visit with the doctor. So this is a name, the Fearless Warrior Advocate, that came about, or it might have been the Fierce Warrior Advocate, I can't remember, that came about in our support group when one of the members was dealing with insurance and payment and denial of services. And I feel like this is a great image to keep, that as care partners, we are the ones that have to say to both our partner and a doctor, hey, I'm noticing these changes. I think we need to get on top of it. Calling multiple times to say, have you had any cancellations? I feel like this is urgent. We need to get in today. Being able to be that person. And sometimes it is even within your own family, having to be that advocate of, no, I don't think we can attend that event. It's just going to be too much or too hard to travel right now. We are in that role of being that very strong and clear advocate. So I'm going to go on to resources. I want to say the Parkinson's Foundation, just tremendous resources. Turning Point, where I work, which is part of the University of Kansas Health System. And you can access that at a website that I'm just going to give you, which is turningpointkc.org, and it will redirect you to the longer website. And there are many groups there about the things we're talking about building resilience. So meditation groups and exercise groups. Right now, those are all on Zoom, so you can access them from your home. The Family Caregiver Alliance is a really great resource, and talks about many of the emotions that people go through as care partners. And that also has a website that you can access. And then finally, the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And I did the best I could to do this in a shorter time. Anybody have any questions before we go on to our mindfulness break? And we're also going to have a panel of care partners who are going to be answering questions. So.
Okay, thank you so much, Susan, for sharing your expertise and encouragement for all of the care partners here today. So after two wonderful speakers, we're going to take the next 10 minutes for you to either get up, stretch your legs, use the restroom, or you can stay in here and join us for a mindfulness activity. You're going to see virtually one of my colleagues on the screen, Krista Ellis. If you're not able to join today, then you can also join online on Mondays at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time during Mindfulness Mondays as well.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, I just want to thank each of you for taking the time to attend the Parkinson's Foundation's Care Partner Summits that are streaming and in person around the country. So thank you for showing up for yourselves. I'm Krista Ellis with the Parkinson's Foundation, and I am so grateful to be able to join you to share some tips and techniques on how to manage stress, which is also suggestive of self-care. First things first, have you taken a deep breath today? Let's do one together. Taking a breath in and letting that breath go. That's better. So we're going to start our conversation today on stress so that we can better understand how stress affects our bodies and our mind. Where there are so many stressors in our daily lives, like getting to the doctor's office, running errands, making that phone call, traffic, taking medicine, our family, our friendships, our relationships, and so much more, those stressors can be intensified for those who are living with or caring for someone with Parkinson's disease. I always love to define topics and words that are around the sessions that I cultivate. So let's define what stress is. Stress is our body's response to pressure. Many different situations, experience, or life events can cause stress. Stress is often triggered when we experience something unexpected, something new, something we don't like, or something that threatens our sense of self, or that we feel we have little control over. Our response to stress is different for everyone. Our ability to manage or deal or cope with stress can depend on our genetics, early life events, social skills and circumstances, and of course, our environment. Now, I'm going to say something that you just might roll your eyes to. Managing and preventing stressful situations can be supported by taking care of yourself. What the field of psychology has discovered is that when we prioritize self-care, we are more adaptable and likely to respond in a healthy way to those stressful situations. That makes us more resilient. Now, I'm borrowing from positive psychologist and resiliency expert, Dr. Maria Sirois. We already know that self-care matters, right? It's not the issue. The issue is actually doing the things that promotes or elevates or encourages our own self-care. Knowing that self-care is important is one thing, but actually prioritizing our self-care is what we are concerned with today. And as caregivers, it's much easier for us to prioritize the needs of someone else versus the needs of ourselves. Self-care can be one of the hardest things that care partners offer themselves. But when we prioritize our self-care, we can reduce stress. So now we're going to do an exercise that we call mindful pausing. And during your moments of pause, we'll be practicing mindful breathing. You can think of a mindful pause as a moment to check in, just a few minutes to connect to how you're breathing, how you're feeling, noticing your heartbeat, and notice where we're at mentally. And during our pause, I'll ask you to focus on the rhythm of your breathing, the rise and the fall of your chest, the inflation of your belly. So when we have restricted breathing, we only have shallow breathing, which is like we fill the lungs and the upper collarbones and below, but we don't let the breath come down into your belly. So relax your belly as you're breathing. You can notice the sensation of air coming in and out of your nostrils, just taking a few deep breaths. Now, during your time, like the mind does, it will likely wander to things in the past, things that may be going on today, or we're worrying about the future. It's okay. That is the practice of mindful meditation. As soon as you notice that you're distracted by a thought, a sound, a sensation, I'll just invite you to notice that you're distracted. That's interesting. And come back to breathing. Come back to the rhythm of your breath, how it feels. Shall we try it? All right. So let's just start by finding a seat that's comfortable for you. If you're tuning in at home, you could be lying down. You could be leaning on the table, whatever is good for you. Hands can be placed where it feels good, on the lap, on the hips. I'm going to place my hands on my heart. This really helps me stay focused and connected to the rising and the falling of my breath. So feel free to join me if you'd like. And now just close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Open the mouth and let that breath out. And again, deep breath in through the nose. And out through the mouth. Good, and one more. Slowly breath in. And breath out. Yeah. And just continue breathing. So your rate of breath will be different from mine, will be different from that of your neighbors. Breathing in and breathing out. Noticing how your chest rises and falls with the breath in and the breath. Focusing on the rhythm of your breathing. And if you become distracted, that's okay. Just notice. This is the practice. This is exercise of the mind, exercise of the brain. Notice that you're distracted and bring your focus back to the sensation of your breathing. Moments of pause just for you. And now I'll be quiet for a moment, a couple seconds, so that you may practice. Breathing in and breathing out. And let's take one more together. Breathing in and out. And fluttering your eyes open if you aren't already. And releasing your hands if you've had them on your chest, or just a little gentle wake up, maybe a shake of the shoulders, a wiggle of the toes, a roll of the ankles, moving fingers. Notice how you feel. Notice how you feel. There are many reasons to practice mindful meditation. Meditation has been researched for many, many years, and science tells us that stress reduction is one of the most common reasons why people try meditation. Meditation promotes emotional health, it enhances your self awareness, it lengthens our attention span, and it can generate kindness towards ourselves and towards others. Mindful meditation trains our minds to notice that we're distracted by thoughts, feelings, sounds, sensations. And when we start to notice those distractions, we are strengthening the muscle of our brains to refocus our attention, to refocus where we spend our valuable time and valuable energy. We want to be investing our energy, our attention more and more into the domain of self-care. Why? Self-care is the number one preventer of burnout. The last thing any one of us wants to experience when we're taking care of someone we love or care for is to be so exhausted that we feel like we can't show up. So we practice mindfulness, which will prioritize self-care, which will prevent burning. The other reason we practice self-care is because we matter. No matter who you are, no matter how important other people's lives are or how significant they are to us, we matter. You matter. And in that prioritizing of our own mattering, we strengthen our relationship with ourselves. And when our relationship with ourselves is strong, our relationship with others strengthens. We can shape our day by asking ourselves this question each day while you're drinking coffee or tea, as we rise from the bed, brushing your teeth, taking our morning walk, watching our morning show. What can I do today that might strengthen me, calm me, or inspire me? We shape our day in these directions to either feel stronger, calmer, or inspired. So I'll ask you right now, what might you do today that could strengthen you, calm you, or inspire you? The good news is most of us have answers to these questions. Some examples that I've received from the Parkinson's community during our Mindfulness Mondays People say going for a walk, practicing yoga, being in nature, taking a bath, playing the violin, hugging or petting my dog or my cat, going for a swim, taking deep breaths, making a scrumptious meal. We know what helps us. We know what strengthens us, calms us, or inspires us. We know the things that make us feel stronger, calmer, or inspired. The difference between us are those folks who are actually doing the things that help. So again, what might you do today that could strengthen you, calm you, or inspire you? If you would like to learn more about mindful meditation, I'd like to invite you to join me at the Parkinson's Foundation for our Mindfulness Mondays program. Each Monday, we lead our community of people with Parkinson's, care partners, and other allied health professionals through a mindful meditation practice and address a variety of topics and techniques that can help reduce stress. It's a great way to commit to 30 minutes of self-care each week. You can learn more about our PD Health at Home Mindfulness Monday program at parkinson.org/PD. I thank you all in taking this time for yourselves. And I leave you with that question. What can I do today that might strengthen me, calm me, or inspire me? Be well, everyone, and enjoy the rest of Care Partner Summit.
Okay. Thank you to, I'll get questions in just a minute. So thank you to Krista online and to Annie here in person for helping us with our mindfulness break. I'm thrilled to welcome our panel. I'm thrilled to welcome our panel moderator, Jill Van Fange. Jill is a licensed clinical social worker who joined Turning Point in May 2019 as the program manager. She's been a social worker for 27 years, with most of her professional years as a medical social worker, both in adult hospital and pediatric hematology oncology at Children's Mercy Hospital. At Turning Point, Jill works closely with program directors to create and promote programming, and she provides support to new and returning participants. Thank you to Jill for joining us today to moderate our Care Partner panel. Jill will also be joined by our 4 amazing care partners, Brian Reitz, Stacy Warren, Jim Eisenbrandt, and Susan Rieger. I'll now turn it over to Jill to kick off our Care Partner panel discussion.
Do you want me to test this? Testing. Can you all hear me? Awesome. Welcome today. I want to resonate some things that I think other people have said about how grateful and thankful we all are for care partners. At whatever stage of life you are, to have somebody that can help you along throughout all the things that go on in our lives are wonderful. So thank you to caregivers that are in the room, caregivers that are online, and the caregivers that maybe we haven't met yet. And maybe when you do, share your story as a caregiver, and that can help that caregiver that you might meet for the first time. So I'm going to try to keep my voice at a good tone. Sometimes my kids say I talk too loud, but I think based on what I've heard earlier in this room, that's not possible. So I'm grateful for that because I like that. So panel discussion, let's start with introductions and let's have Brian introduce himself, please.
Sure. I talk pretty loud. I'm a teacher, so in another life. So my name is Brian Reitz. I live in Lincoln, Nebraska. I work at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. I'm in the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Business and Finance. I do communications there. I also teach a class there. My connection to Parkinson's is my mom, who was diagnosed in around 2000, so about 20 years. And she now lives in an assisted care facility in Crete, Nebraska, which is just down the road from Lincoln. And he wanted us to share a fun fact too. So my fun fact is about 7 years ago, 2015, I was about 10 miles down the road here at a place called the K, and I was at game 1 of the World Series when the Royals beat the Mets. I'm a huge Royals fan. And so I brought my son to the game. My daughter was supposed to come, but she couldn't get away from the university. And my son's name is Brett. So that may tell you something how big of a fan I am. So he's actually named after Brett Saberhagen, though. He's a 1T Brett, as I call him. So that's me.
Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Eisenbrand. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm a recovering lawyer. I grew up here in Kansas City. I've lived here nearly 80 years and practiced law for 50 years. I retired about 4 years ago. It was just time, but more importantly, it was my time to start driving my wife, Miss Lou, which I'm more than happy to do. We have 2 children. Jen is a teacher. She is married to Matt, who is also a teacher. We have a son, Matt, who is married to a Jen. They live in Canada and they are both lawyers. I guess a fun fact, and maybe the only good thing to come out of COVID and probably Parkinson's, is during COVID, of course, no one could get haircuts. Well, my wife's hairstylist called up one day and she said, I'll come over. It was summer and I'll cut your hair. So we said, fine. So I decided, I can kick the barbershop with the grouchy guys telling raunchy stories. I think I'll team up with Joni. And it also helped in the sense that Lou and I could do 2 things at the same time and just saves ourselves 1 trip. So as long as Joni remembers that it's Lou's hair that gets dyed and not mine, we're good.
You've already met me, but I guess I'll do a fun fact. When I was in the arts, I used to really poo-poo sports. And I mean, that's kind of hard to do around here. And I even used to say, when people would talk about a sport, I would say, is that the one with the round ball or the pointy ball? Anyways, and now I've converted. I'm a huge Jayhawks basketball fan, which you have to be if you live in Lawrence, Kansas.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stacy Warren, and I grew up in Halstead, Kansas, which is near Wichita. And I made my way out to Dodge City, where I ran track. And then I went to Emporia State, got a business degree. Oh, sorry. Thank you for telling me, letting me know. Got a business degree in Emporia, and then I made my way up here to Kansas City and started working at Sprint. And while I was at Sprint, and I was able to get my master's. They paid for my master's. That was really great. So I met my husband, Charles, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2018. I met him at Sprint. And let's see. The fun fact about me is that I love baseball. And so I had season tickets with the Royals when I met Charles, and that may be one of the reasons that he married me or asked me to marry him. And by meeting and being with Charles, I inherited a lovely family. My stepdaughter's here today, and we have a grandson and a granddaughter. So the baseball piece, every time we go on vacation, we try to visit a ballpark. And so we have now marked off 20 of 30. So we've only got 10 more to go. So that's my fun fact.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to do a reminder for you panelists. Keep projecting your voice when you answer your questions. It's really hard. I can see as I'm talking with my hand right now because you're having to hold the microphones. And so I say that because I can easily talk with my hands up here, hands-free, but just as a reminder. So let's start with question to Brian. Brian, how have you or did you navigate the changes in your relationship with your mother as the Parkinson's has progressed? So how has your role as adult son, changed and progressed as the disease has progressed?
I'll preface that a little bit by saying that my sister's really her primary caregiver, caretaker, even at this assisted living. My sister lives a little bit closer to Crete, but I think where I've navigated that the best is my dad died in December, and so he was mom's real close caregiver, right? And so it's been a shock to us to make that change a lot in how we navigate that relationship. And so I would say my notes are that I've become a much better listener over time and really listening into what she's going through. I'm intentional about outreach to her. Every morning, my sister and I have a group text together. And then each night as I leave work, when I get into my vehicle, which is, I mean, I talk over my, whatever that's called in your car, right? Where I'm not on the phone. But I try to call her every night on my way home just to check in with her too. And that's been a big benefit. We didn't do that much before. So that's probably a way that a couple of the ways that I've navigated that.
And that's great because you really are speaking from not the hands-on caregiver, but acknowledging how important it is to have a different role as a caregiver, even if you're a caregiver from afar, about those touch points, communication, touch ends, those are just as vital and important sometimes as the actual physical care part of a caregiver, care partner. Thank you, Brian. Stacy, how can you advocate for your loved one to ensure they are receiving the best care possible, both medical and maybe at some point, in home or, but go ahead.
Okay. Okay, this one's closer than so. Okay. So can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just want to ask, have you guys had an experience where you've gone to the doctor and you maybe felt like you weren't heard or you weren't able to understand or maybe ask the right question in a way that you got an answer, that kind of thing? Well, our first experience with meeting with our neurologist, Charles was actually diagnosed with an essential tremor. And so the doctor said, you really don't need to come back and see me unless you have any problems if your tremor gets worse. And 2 years later, we went back to get that medication. And at this particular appointment, we waited 90 minutes for that appointment. And then when they came in, they had a resident had helped or, with part of the appointment and things had changed. And so when the doctor came in, I said, why did we have to wait 90 minutes? And he said, do you want this appointment or not? So I was on my heels and he said, oh, and things have changed and you now have Parkinson's disease. So we were ready for that diagnosis in 2016, but not 2018. So from there, we kind of took it upon ourselves, or I put together almost a PowerPoint presentation when we went to see the next neurologist. And the first question I asked was, what's the longest anyone has to, longest time that someone's waited in your waiting area for an appointment? And he said, just 24 minutes. In the last 6 months, the longest wait time was 24 minutes. And I thought, okay, we're in the right place, right? So then we started walking through everything and just we made it clear that he was going to be a part of our medical team if we wanted him to be. And so it was kind of like an interview, this is what we need from you. We have a pharmacist, we have a primary care physician, our daughter is an RN. So we have this package and, now you can be a part of our team. So you have to speak up for yourself and for your loved one. So it's sometimes it can be awkward, but getting out there and being ahead of it, we've just found that it's been good. We have a great neurologist now. So
thank you. Jim, considering the roles that partners have in a relationship, were there any role changes that came due to the Parkinson's diagnosis?
Certainly. I think one of the things I want to say, Lou and I, in a way, were fortunate in that we know how she developed Parkinson's. She was a nurse in Vietnam during the war, and it was due to exposure to Agent Orange. We know that the VA has accepted that, and in a way that has totally shaped the course of her disease and my care for her. She has written 2 books about this, which has been very therapeutic for her as well as for me. In terms of roles, the first and a major one is literally, I'm driving Miss Lou. I'm also driving our grandkids to and from school a couple days a week. With Lou, the decision about driving was made rather easily due to problems she was having getting the car into the garage and an accident in a golf cart, where instead of stopping, she hit the gas and hit a car. It was further made easy. I can't remember why it was, but all of our children were here that summer. And so we all sat down and the decision was made, and there was no fighting or issues about whether or not it should occur. I've also found that scheduling has become an amazing, I would say, burden. Fortunately, we all have handhelds. We have ways of scheduling now. But for example, yesterday, my urologist called to set up an appointment, and I was looking at my calendar, had to look at Lou's calendar and the doctor's calendar, and somehow we got it worked out. The other issue, and that I've had to take over more, is just simply decision making. Lou has always been one of the most decisive persons I have ever met. And now, even with little things, it's no, you make the decision and I'll go along with it. And that's been difficult.
Thank you for sharing. I can see that portion of the role change is difficult, and that there's a loss in the characteristic that you probably really loved about her in your roles as a partner. She made decisions and you liked that. And that's change. And so thank you for sharing that vulnerable aspect of how it has changed for you all. Susan, how do you suggest navigating the changes in my loved one?
Well, I think there would be many layers of that. And probably the first one, if your loved one is still in a position where they're capable of discussing and reflecting, having that talk with them. And again, someone earlier recommended choosing that time of day, choosing a quiet space, sitting nearby so you can hear easily, and being able to talk about what you're observing. And then I think the second steps of that would be whatever other accommodations are needed, whether it's driving, whether it's changes in the home, whether it's talking with a doctor or nurse about what changes you're observing. So, and I think with Parkinson's especially, care partners are in that role of making those observations, because sometimes the loved one doesn't see them or isn't able to be so clear about them.
Thank you. Brian, And I'm sorry, you guys are passing that back and forth, but thank you. Brian, was there anything you did, you or your sister, because you talked about your sister, as a caregiver as well. Is there anything that you all did right away after learning about the diagnosis of Parkinson's? And then there's a second part, which is, can you think of something that you wish you would have done differently? Now, and it's been 20 years. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'll hit on that a little bit. First of all, my memory is that I don't think that we were really told at first. And so I think, mom and dad were married more than 50 years. So they were really close all that time. And so I think that a lot of the decisions and things that they were doing were between each other a lot of the time. And me and my sister didn't know about it as well. But once we did find out, and I remember me and my sister talking about it. I remember finding I'm a big reader, and so I tried to find everything I could and read up on it as much as I possibly could and find out how I could be helpful and really what it meant to mom to have that. And then what I wish we would have done better at first is help set up more of a care plan, I think, is what I wish we would have done more. And I think it would have been beneficial to her as to what she's going through now. So I think setting up a care plan earlier would have been beneficial.
That's great advice. I think I've heard that in that, as we always say, like being proactive is better than being reactive. And so sometimes we still have to be reactive because we're in a crisis during times. But sometimes being able to go back to that plan, which is like a map. I mean, we all have to look at maps or listen to our GPS or whatever we're using these days. It's kind of just like that, like a care plan kind of is a compass, a guide, as things change along the way. And the care plan can change, obviously, and you can make edits and scratch throughs, along the way. But it sounds like that would have been something helpful to you all when things were stable, if you will, or just fine, if you will, to think about the future. Is that what I'm hearing you saying, like a care plan? Thank you.
I think the doctors and the resources that she had available that maybe we didn't know. And I think since we didn't know about it too, like we couldn't really help them plan that out a little bit more. And I think, just some of the mobility issues she's dealing with now, maybe at the time, if we had known more at the time, we could have helped along the way a little bit better and lining up people like movement disorder specialists and things like that along the way more. Is that helpful?
Do any of the other panelists have thoughts or have experience with care planning? Okay. And I think to answer a little bit of your question, just from my background, it would be, a care plan could be anything from the financial care plan of things to the physical care to, think of like your primary needs. And as they change, as your physical capabilities change. So think about how that is going to impact, the emotions, the finances, the space of living, whether they're going to remain in your home, making modifications early so that later on they're used. Or, so instead of like putting in, a grab bar after there's been a fall, if you're going to do a bathroom remodel or adjustment, be thinking about like, oh, hey, this would be helpful in 5 years. Let's go ahead and add a built-in grab bar now because we want to be in this home for X amount of years comfortably. If you're thinking about changing doorways, some of those logistical things. So that could be also part of a care plan. So I think it could be, like I said, the emotional, behavioral, financial, and physical part, as we all work through a continuum of stages of life. So, yeah. Lou, did you?
Like Lou mentioned, the Aware and Care kits are a wonderful resource, and I have one at our resource table out here as well. So if you're interested in seeing what's in it, stop by and we'll get you signed up for a kit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'm sorry, I lost track, but, oh, well, let's talk about, Jim, can you talk about how you and Lou have engaged your adult children and or adult grandchildren maybe in the care for you,
I'm
the
not
care
that
of
old.
you, huh? For the care of you and of Lou. So yeah, you can talk a little bit about how you had a conversation or how you kind of tapped on their shoulders and asked for help.
Our children, let's see, our daughter would have been close to 30 and our son 28 when Lou was diagnosed. So they were out of the house. Also, our son and his wife being in Canada, they are not as directly involved at this point in time. However, they have been, both the children as well as their spouses have been involved in the serious decisions by phone calls if they're not here visiting or we're not there visiting. One of the examples is the last time we met with Lou's neurologist, I said, I need some information about what are we going to do if Lou takes a fall and I'm not there. And he said, very simple, you're going to buy an Apple Watch, because Apple Watches all have emergency apps that will, well, let me give you an example. We have a friend we were having dinner with. She took a nap in her lounger. She woke up and her left leg had gone to sleep. She fell. Didn't hurt herself at all. The watch said, "Are you okay?" It started counting down to 5. And she said, "I'm okay." That took care of it. Had it reached 5, it would have dialed emergency 911 and things would have gone on from there. So our daughter is our go-to techie. She's a school teacher, teaches kindergarten and English as a second language. And so if she can make kindergartners understand, she can make me understand. So she came over, we got the watch, she came over, set it up for Lou, and Lou has been working with it the last few weeks, and we're starting to feel pretty comfortable. I would say one thing about Apple Watches and Parkinson's. The first thing that happened to her, she was just kind of going through the things that are on it, the apps, and she accidentally hit 911 and didn't do anything about it. And about an hour later, a very nice police lady showed up at her house and asked, "Is everything okay?" 1 minute later, okay. So I'm not sure about that, but that is a decision and help that our daughter was able to afford us. Early this year, I needed a hip replacement. Well, our daughter's in school. Lou doesn't drive. Fortunately, our son was in a position that he could take 3 weeks off, and he came home and helped take care of me until I was able to get around and do the things that I need to do. So they are involved. And as I say, on the important decisions, we will have a family discussion. They're fully aware of our estate plans. And that's the way we have been handling it. And we're very fortunate that the kids are involved.
Great, thank you. Stacy, since Charles' diagnosis is rather recent, if you will. How did you navigate, or did you, or have you let friends and family know about the Parkinson's diagnosis? And then how did you navigate to some of the ways in which people, helped you or supported you?
So after Charles was diagnosed, that day we, came home, went straight to the pharmacy, got carbidopa, levodopa, and the first call we made was to our daughter to tell her the diagnosis. But she is the only one that we told that day, and they were on vacation, and that was kind of tough, but we felt like we really needed to let them know right away. So Charles didn't want to tell anyone. He just said, nope, nobody needs to know. There's no reason. And, I wanted to honor that and support him. So I did for probably maybe 4 to 6 months. And then finally I just said, I need someone to talk to. And, I just want to, for those who have been, newly diagnosed, that is important, that you have someone to talk to and to bounce things off of and that kind of thing. And so when we sat down, I said, who are all the people that we want to know about this at some point? So we made that list, and then we put a timeline. These people need to know in the next couple months, these people in the next, maybe 6 months, just people we weren't that close to, but we might, see or, hear from. And so together, like I said, we went through this together and made this plan. And so that made it much easier. It didn't make the conversation any easier when you tell someone for the first time, but we did that together. So that I just, want to share that because that was important, and it's hard to honor someone, but stand up for yourself and make sure that you have the support that you need. So
Thank you. On time, do we have, give me a time. Okay, perfect. Oh, I'm gonna bounce to 3, Susan, because I really like that. How do you suggest communicating with my loved one when I am feeling overextended and I need a break? It's a tough one, but we all know that's out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Giving me the tough one. I think this is a really important question. And, just like our self-care is so important for continuing to be a generous and kind care partner, this question about communicating when you're feeling bad yourself is very important, that we still get that out in the open, and that we let people know, let our loved ones know what we can and cannot take care of. And that's hard because we want to do it all as care partners. We want to be able to cover it all. And I also think it's important to, still have a dialogue going where there's still some mutuality of being able to say, I know you're feeling really stressed out now. I also want to let you know how this new event or new situation has also been really weighing on my mind, affecting my sleep, and saying, let's be a team here and let's problem solve what we might do to get through this.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna tackle a couple of the questions on the cards with time, limited time. And I'm gonna just say the question, and then let's see who up there feels like they have something like, that sound good. Okay, how do you handle the glad to mad, which happens in an instant with no indication of why it happened? So it sounds like the question is like, how do you handle the variations in mood, glad to mad? Any suggestions from the panel? Give them some time. Take a drink of water out there. Give them a little time. Okay. Sounds like,
I this may sound simplistic, and I don't mean it to, because it's hard. You just you have to have a conversation. You can't just internalize and say walk out of the room and ignore it, because it's going to happen again and again and again. It's not necessarily an easy discussion, but you just have to have an open discussion. And sometimes Lou just has to vent, and you know, that's a part of it, not just the disease. That's a part of marriage or any relationship that you happen to be in. I don't know how else to, I don't know what really, there aren't any tricks. I just think you have to talk about it and realize that this is a part of the disease and this is the way it's going to be.
thank you. I will add to that to say, in approaching the person, use an I statement. It's probably like overdone. You probably hear that in your line of work or wherever you're at, but just simply saying, I've noticed, like I do this a lot in my house. I've noticed lately there's been some extra grumpiness. What's going on? And then the second thing I do is I add a question. Or like lately I've been using the reference of Eeyore, which is from Winnie the Pooh. And so I've been saying you're being kind of like Eeyore lately, more than normal. What's going on? You know, so kind of again, exploring with the person through an I statement. I've noticed, I'm wondering, and then follow up maybe with a question. I don't know if that would be helpful. Oh yeah, go ahead, Stacy.
I just wanted to say something really quick, and this is maybe the other direction, but sometimes when Charles is quiet, I will ask, how are you feeling today? And I get either fine, okay, or a sarcastic great. And so then I have kind of this little list that I go through. I go to his medicine dispenser and I see if he's taken his, 10 o'clock medicine. So is he behind on that? And then I try to think, okay, or ask, what did you have for breakfast? Because he loves cereal, which has no protein in it. And so, just make him yogurt or some scrambled eggs or whatever it is, and just try to get those things that are pretty common, that might change his mood or his mind, about those things. So then we don't have to have a conversation necessarily, but I can, weed those things out. And by the way, that protein thing came from my daughter. So thank you.
Thank you. The next question are there groups that will help in the home? And then the statement is that I moved to a rural area and don't have a support group. So I do know that there's a list of support groups out on one of the tables out there. And then just having met with some of the other support group leaders that are here today, that some of those support groups that are in other areas are being held hybrid or virtual. And so you had mentioned living in a rural area. So if you have access to internet, you have access to a phone or to a computer or to a library system or even a community health system, that you might be able to Zoom in or whatever platform they're using to a support group, even if you're in a rural area. And then are there groups that will help in the home? Yes, but there are limitations if you're rural. And I can't speak to that because I'm here in Kansas City, but I don't know if any of our panelists can, because I believe we all live suburbia, metro. But I would say if you get connected with a support group, usually those are led by people in areas that may have more knowledge of help in the home. So if you're asking for like physical help, they may have knowledge of that. If you're asking for like adaptive equipment to modify the home to be safer or more accessible for the person, those are out there. They're just going to have to travel a ways. Yeah. Oh yeah. You know. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Mhm. Mhm. Oh gosh, area agency on aging would be Missouri or Kansas, or if you're from other states, Google search. They all probably have a little bit different names based on the state. But look for those, and they sounds like they would have some connections to resources for you. Oh, elder care locator is being put out there too as another good resource. Senior Blue Book, which I know there's one here in the Kansas City area, is another great resource. And they're throughout several different states, but they have like a whole like yellow pages, if you will, of resources. And it's called the Senior Blue Book. Oh, okay. One more question. Okay. This is a tough one, but one we probably all have experience or may experience, and not just with Parkinson's. What do you do if the person with Parkinson's isn't wanting to go along with the plan? Anyone think about it?
Well, I got this information from Kim Nitz, who used to have Madison's job. So her father had Alzheimer's, and so but this is relative here because her and her father wrote a letter about when he wasn't going to be able to drive. They wrote the letter together. And so he signed it at the bottom. And then, about a year later, he was having problems, kind of think he ran through the garage or something with the car. And so, they told him that it was time. And he said, no, I want to drive. I love to drive. And they said, okay, Dad, let's sit down. And he read the letter and he goes, well, this must be true because I signed it. So partnering together like that, it just trigger with me that was a good thing.
I think sometimes care partners are in the role of like cheerleading and encouraging and reminding why something's important. And it's a really hard role. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, thank you to Jill. Thank you to Brian, Jim, Susan, Stacy for being here today and for such a wonderful discussion. And thank you for everyone here who joined us in person and online via Zoom. Before you head out, just a few housekeeping things. If you want to open your folders, you should have an event survey in there. If you don't mind filling out your survey and either handing it to a staff or volunteer on your way out or leaving it on the table. All attendees will receive an email following the program with a link to the recording. And then I want to thank our sponsor, Acadia, again, for making this program possible. If you have not, feel free to stop by our education table here over in the expo area, check out our Aware and Care Kit and other resources that we have available. And we just hope that you guys reach out if you need anything, check out our resources, and join us again for future programs. Thanks for being here.